In this video, I'm going to show you how to crop with the Lasso tool. So, first of all, you should always come to the image that you have just added and make sure that it can be edited. So make sure it is a raster tool. So when I zoom in, we can see it is a smart object. It has a little smart object thumbnail. So I'm going to right click on it and rasterize the layer. Now we can see it is rasterized. So something that can be very helpful when we're cropping is knowing when we have cropped something out. So instead of having a white background, I'm going to create a new layer so we can see that there's a layer in between. I'm going to hide my goat and I'm going to choose an obnoxious color. I like violets because it's hard to mistake what's there as long as we're not cropping out something that's violet. I'm going to come to the paint bucket tool. I'm going to drop violet in there. And then we can see when I add this in that there was a lot of white in that area. Now on to actually using the lasso tool to crop. In the tools bar, we can see our lasso tool. It looks like a little lasso icon. There's a couple of different ways that we can use this, such as the polygonal lasso tool, which makes you can click around to make angular lassos, or the standard lasso tool, which you click and drag to make your designs. Both of them are keyed to L. What I can do is I can click and drag around the shape that I want, and it'll create a selection based off of what I've done. But you can see I've accidentally let go too soon, and it has automatically created a selection. And if I start to click around again, it's going to add either different selections to it depending on my properties at the top, which we have add to selection, or it can replace. And you can see that it's going to replace every time I click around. So I'm going to click around and I'm going to create a rough selection. You can see that I keep on accidentally letting go, and that's not ideal. So the lasso tool is quick and dirty, but sometimes it can be very tricky to use. And very tricky if you wanted to trace everything in one go. So we can see that I've made a selection around here. And if I move over to my move tool, I can move that around and I can separate it. Or I can come up to the top to select. I can go to inverse, so it selects everything but the area that I've created a selection, and I can press delete. And that has cropped out everything around. But that's not really good crop. What would work better is if I took out little sections at a time. So I'm going to move back to my lasso tool. And if I click outside of my selection, you could see that the little selection bounding box has gone away. I'm going to zoom in to little sections at a time. And I'm going to use the lasso tool to create an accurate tracing. I'm going to trace just a little bit on the inside so that there's no white left over. We don't want to see anything that has little white parts still left there, kind of like how this one does. That's poor cropping. So you can see how the lasso tool can be really good for doing detail work. I can also, if I say I take a little bit too much, you can see where it's onto the horn right there. I can come up to the top and tell it that I want to subtract from a selection. And I will draw a part, and you can see that it is taking that part away. Or if I accidentally take away too much, I can come up to the add selection and add that in. I can do the same on the regular version of this if I use Shift to add and Option or Alt to subtract. So I'm going to use Option to take away a little bit, delete some, carve and delete, carve and delete. This can take a while to do, so I'm going to speed up the video so you can watch me trim this away, and we'll come back right at the end when I've got it nearly finished. A quick trick that you might see me doing right now is that every once in a while I get to the end of what I can see, and I want to see a little bit more. So if you hold down spacebar for just a second, notice that it changes into the hand tool, and I can click and move around the canvas. And then when I let go of space, it goes directly back to the tool I was using just before. So using the quick select version of the hand, I can very easily move fluidly around the canvas. And there we go. One smoothly cut out ram skull. It looks like there's a couple of little hot spots where I can still see a little bit of the background. So you'd want to, after you're done, go through and trim those out. And I even trim it a little bit into the shape when I can afford to do so, so that when I have it fully removed, it is gone. If I make a selection, note that you can only really edit things in that selection. If I make a selection and I want to remove it, remember, I can always click somewhere else on the background and it can remove that selection, or I can come up to select and deselect, and that'll remove that selection. So now I have this beautifully trimmed out ram skull, and I can move it around and change it over whatever thing I want to do with it.